Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Maseches NIDAH Nun Aleph. We begin on Nun Amud Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This goes back to yesterday's discussion regarding the nivlas oif tahar, a dead kosher bird, where the Torah teaches that if one eats that bird, that unkosher bird, because an avela is usher to eat, but if one eats it, he will receive a very high level of tumah on account of that experience. A tumah chamura. Him and the begadim that he's wearing become tummy. Now, in order to generate that tumah, there's no need for any preparatory elements which are typically required for something to become tummy. Like, in contrast to food. In order for food to become tummy, it needs hechsher l'kabel tumas, to get wet by one of the 7 primary liquids. It also needs to come into contact with a source of tumah, like a dead lizard, like a sheretz. Otherwise, there's no tumah on food, naturally, but here, there's a natural, sort of self-generating tumah in this dead kosher bird, to transmit tumah chamura to one who eats it. So for that, we don't need any hechsher. We don't even need machshava. We don't have to designate it as eating material. It's metami regardless. The question was regarding tumah kala. You see, this bird is also food material. And as such, it should have a basic tumah as well, such as food, which is tameh, which will have a low-level tumah, which will metami other liquids, etc. Not metami people, but what about that basic tumah, that tumah kala? So in this specific case, it doesn't need any hechsher, any preparation, in terms of getting wet, in terms of receiving tumah from elsewhere, because it's part of this tumah chamura package. And since this bird will generate tumah chamura, it automatically generates tumah kala as well. And it's regarded like tummy food, with its ramifications. The sticking point was machshava. Chacham require machshava, which means you have to designate it as food material. Rabbi Yochanan disagreed based on kal v'chomer. There's no need to have machshava. It automatically has both levels of tumah. Look, if it even has the more severe tumah without designation, certainly the lighter tumah. Now, it turns out that they were discussing a very specific case where that bird took a crash landing into the wine and it became a little bit unsuitable for consumption. But initially we thought it was relating to all, it was a broad machlekes to all. Nivlas oif tahar, whether or not it needs machshava to give it that basic tumah. And Rabbi Yochanan presented his view with a kal v'chomer, which the Chachamim negated, as we're going to see in the upcoming discussion. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, kal v'chomer, let me prove that there's no need for machshava to give it tumah kala. Look, if this bird possesses the upgraded tumah without prior designation, tumah kala machshava, wouldn't you think it has the basic tumah without the need to designate it as food? Chacham responded, you can't compare one type of tumah to the other. It's true that by the more severe tumah, there's no need for machshava shekein eino yiredes lekach, as opposed to tumah kala, which is different. Now, what do they mean? What's this phrase? My eino yiredes lekach. Amar Rabba Chika Amrilei. They meant as follows: Lo im amras betuma. We turn to the next number. Betuma chamura. Shekein eina oisa kayitze ba. Look, it's very different. Tumah kala from tumah chamura. Tumah chamura, when a person eats it and he becomes tummy, he can't turn around and transmit that tumah to somebody else. It stops right there. Has a limited lifespan. Tumah kala she'oisa kayitze ba, as opposed to tumah kala, the basic tumah applied to food, that can turn around and be transmitted to the next food. So it's very different. Amarle Abayis says, well, if anything, that's all the more reason to go with Rabbi Yochanan approach. If anything, it's more logical now. Uma tumah chamura dekila. If tumah chamura has a weakness, so to speak, that it can't carry over to the next, then it can't duplicate likewise. Still, so despite that sort of inability, that efficiency, mitamash le machshava, it generates tumah without prior designation. Tumah kala, the chamira, it's a ba, the lighter tumah, which in a sense it's lighter. It's ironic, it's lighter, but it's more powerful. It can be transmitted further. So because of its strength, wouldn't you think that it's easier to activate it? It doesn't need machshava. So this couldn't have been their discussion. Elam Rav Sheshes, rather, says Rav Sheshes, I'll tell you what he had in mind. He meant to say like this. What they responded was like this. Loi im amras betumah chamur. You can't compare to the higher level tumah. Shekein eina tzricha hechsher. Because to generate tumah chamur, there's no need for preparation. Like we explained before, the bird need not get wet. It doesn't have to go through the phases of hechsher. It doesn't have to receive tumah from Hasheretz. It automatically is tamei regardless. So perhaps because of its strength, it also does not require machshava. Toima b'tumah kala, as opposed to tumah kala, which in general only happens through the preparatory stages. Shetzricha hechsher, which needs hechsher. In order for a banana to become tamei, it has to get wet, it has to touch a sheretz. So since it's weaker, perhaps it needs more to get it activated. Ask the Gemara, behold it. That's true in general. Food needs hechsher to become tamei, but in our case, the bird is automatically going to have tumah kala without hechsher. It's sort of a package deal. Because of its tumah chamura ability, it also has tumah kala without any preparatory phases. What are you referring to hechsher here? Umitzricha hechsher, is hechsher a requirement? Vatnan shloisha asar devarim nemar b'nimas tar. There are 13 elements relating to this bird. Tzricha machshava, although it needs machshava, but ve'ena matame el beis hapli. It's only matame as you swallow it. But ve'ena tzricha hechsher need not go through those preparatory phases. You're right, says the Gemara, although it doesn't need to come into contact with another source of tumah to become tumah. It has its own tumah generated. It doesn't have to touch a sheretz, but it has another element of preparation which is needed. It has to get wet before becoming tumah. Hechshamayim baya. Ask the Gemara, why? They go hand in hand, and the pasuk eliminates the need for hechsher in this case. All types of hechsher, all elements are not needed. Not the getting wet, not the touching the sheretz. Maishna, what's the difference? Hechsher sheretz leiba. It doesn't have to come into contact with the sheretz to become tamei ketanu rishmuel, as we learned. Coming up soon, that material which will have the ability to be a self-generated of strong tumah chamura is already a shu'in. It doesn't need any preparation, even for the lighter tumah. Likewise, it need not get wet either. All elements of a hechsher are suspended in this case. Hechsher mayim namely to tanu rishmuel. So this is a pasuk discussing hechsher. It discusses seeds, it discusses plants. Al kol zera zerashi zareya. We compare everything to this material. Maz roim shein seifel l'tamei tumah chamura, just as seeds and plants are not going to generate tumah chamura. Why would they? And that is exactly why. They require a proper hechsher process, tzrichen hechsher, avkol, likewise any other material. Only something which matches, she'ein soifon l'tamei tumah chamura, which won't have tumah chamura, tzrichen hechsher, as opposed to our bird over here, yotz nil seif tar, she'soifa, which ultimately will be metame, that's severe tumah when he swallows it, tamei tumah chamura, and therefore it doesn't need any outside help. She'ein tzorech hechsher. So why were they referring to hechsher as a precondition for tumah kala, if in this specific case it's not needed? Yeah, they were talking concepts. In general, to enable tumah kala, hechsher is required. So that puts it behind tumah chamura, which never needs hechsher. So you're right, in this specific circumstance, it's an exception. Even for tumah kala, we don't need hechsher, but in concept, if we're going to pit one against the other, compare tumah kala, which typically needs hechsher, versus tumah chamura, which doesn't need, that sets them apart and negates the kal v'chomer. Shum tumah chamura ba'olam, shum tumah kala ba'olam. The general concept of tumah chamura, which never needs hechsher, as opposed to tumah kala, which generally does need hechsher. So let's just recap. Rabbi Chanuri sought to prove that even for tumah kala, we don't need machshava, based on the fact that it's not needed for tumah chamura. Chacham respond, tumah chamura has an advantage over tumah kala. It never needs hechsher, as opposed to tumah kala, which typically needs hechsher. So perhaps in this case, it has additional conditions as well, i.e. machshava. Amar Umayda Rabbi Yochanan. Now this links back to the midpoint of yesterday's daf, where Rabbi Yochanan was quoted as saying, look, when you have materials which can be consumed either by animals, in which case they're not eligible to be considered food, but sometimes consumed by humans, in which case that gives them eligibility to be considered, give them food status regarding meiser obligations, regarding becoming tamei tumas oichlin. If it's still on the ground growing, you can't redesignate it at this early stage. You have to wait until it's picked off the ground. When it becomes a candidate for tumah, it becomes food material off the ground, which is going to become tamei. Now you can redesignate it as you wish. But while it's still mechuber, you can't. Amar Rava, there's one exception. Rabbi Yochanan would agree le'inyan maser regarding triggering the chi of maser on this material, on this dual use material. In this case, Mepharshim explains, since maser conceptually can even get activated while it's still growing in the ground, you can label something as truma while it's still in the ground, so it already has an opening. It relates to maser even while it's in the ground. The machshavas chibur shema machshavas, in this case, if you redesignate it, classified as human food while still in the ground, it will impact the material with respect to activating chiv of maser. Amar Rava, how do I know this huge chiddush? Mina minila. This now we have a mishnah. Hasiya va'ezav va'koronis, all these dual use material. Shabachats are growing in the yard. Imhoyu nishmar. And Chayav in Brisa says, look, a precondition for chiv maser is nishmarin. Now, what does nishmarin mean? The Gemara figured it means to say that he's looking after it for his own personal use. He's designating them as food. Hey Chidami, now what exactly happened here? What's the background? If initially he was planted them for his personal consumption, then why even this? Of course it's chayiv in maser. It's human food. Apparently initially it was planted for animal feed. And it requires a redesignation. Uktani, and still the Brisa says, you can do that even while it's still growing. And if he was guarding it for his own personal use, it's chayiv. Clearly, you can have machshava while still growing. Amar Rav Ashi, no. Nobody planted them. They were wildly growing in the chatzar. And the truth is, it's presumed to be for human consumption. Okay, so what's missing? The Brisa just means to say, make sure that it's owned, because otherwise, if it's hefker, it's pata from maser. So it's a totally different point. If the yard is guarded, is enclosed, and it's considered personally owned, so the growth is chayiv maser imla. But otherwise, if it's hefker, it's exempt from maser. So it's unrelated to our discussion. Maser Rav Ashi. Yeah, the Kasha on Rava, who made this split today, said, well, regarding the ability to mekabel tumah, that designation has to take place after it's been harvested. But regarding activating the chiv of maser, that can occur even while it's still growing. So, seemingly you can have material which is subject to chiv of maser, but not yet subject to becoming tamei tumas oichlin. That's not really consistent with the Mishnah of yesterday that explained that it goes hand in hand. If something is subject to maser, automatically it's subject to tumas oichlin. And here we have a case which is not so. Maser Rav Ashi called shchayavim v'masris. Mishnah states something which is chayiv maser, mitamei tumas oichlin. End quote. V'imisa, according to you, we have these examples. The chayavim v'maser, which were redesignated and labeled as human food while still growing in the ground, that activates chiv of maser, but not tumah vein mitamei tumas oichlin. Rava, 100% right. You see, the Mishnah is referring to concepts. In general, it is so. Where there is maser, there is tumas oichlin. Although not in every single specific circumstance. So that's not a kasha. The Mishnah means like this: Kol min, any type of food, any species, shechai b'maser, which is classified as food regarding maser, in general, mitamei tumas oichlin. But of course, you'll find me some one-off case. Hachanam Mistar will even prove to you that the Mishnahs present in this fashion It's about concepts. It's about generalities. Mitani Sefer. Look at the Mishnah coming up today. Kosher chayv b'reishis hageis, chayv matanis. An animal which is subject to the mitzvah of reishis hageis, the first sharing given to the kohen, which is specific to a sheep, is automatically also chayv matanis. Requires you to give the portions, the forearm, the stomach to the kohen. V'yesh chayv matanis, chayv b'reishis hageis, but it doesn't automatically go the other way. You can have a goat which is chayv matanis, not reishis hageis, which is specific to sheep. Now here too, you can uncover some anomaly case where this formula won't hold true. Well, if it's exact and precise, I'll give you an example. A treifa, an animal with an internal wound, the chayeves b'reish hageis, still chayev b'reish hageis, but not ben chayeves matanis, no matanis, it's asher b'achila, right? Apparently, it's about concept. In concept, one which is subject to Reish Hageis is also subject to Matanis, even though you'll have that one-off case. Amar Ravina, no. Hamani Reb Shimon. That wouldn't be an issue here because the Mishnah goes like Reb Shimon. This nan, or the Sanya, Reb Shimon poites a treifa from Reish Hageis. A treifa, he says, is part of Reish Hageis as well. So the formula holds true 100%. Amar Rav Simya bar Ashi. Okay, I'll come and bring you another example where it's about concept and not necessarily about every specific case. Tashma, Hamafker's karma. His fellow let go of his vineyard, made it hefker. The next morning he had a change of heart and he quickly regains ownership. And we know that hefker material is exempt from maser, is exempt from other gifts to the poor like payah. Like here was a very short-lived hefker. We have a special pasuk, Rashi brings it, that regarding gifts to the poor, you can't get away with this loophole. You're still chayav to give those gifts, but maser you pata from sins. The fact is, he reacquired it from its hefker status, which exempts it from maser. Tashma, mafker is karmoi. Vishkim, next morning he wakes up way early in the morning before anybody can get to Vishkim Abayker Batzra, and he harvested his supposedly hefker vineyard. So it's still chayav, a parrot, of a oilulus, of a shikha, we pay all the gifts to the poor, it's chayiv, but patam and there's no master. Because he acquired it from hefker. The question is, Vanan Tanan, didn't we have a Mishnah yesterday? You cannot have one without the other. Kol shechayiv a payah, chayiv a master. If there's payah, there's master. Elav shmamino min ketani shmamino. That proves that point. It's all about concepts. In general, when it's chayiv and payah, which has higher degree of requirement, of preconditions, certainly it's chayiv and master. That's in general. Although you'll find me a one-off exceptional case, such as the short-lived hefkers. That supports Rava's approach to the Mishnayos in general, that we're talking about concepts, in which case the kasha that was asked on him was resolved, and Rava sticks to his position, he quotes Rabbi Yechanan, that all that regarding redesignating this dual-use material as human consumption material, regarding tumah only can take place after picked, but regarding maser, that can happen even while still in the ground. Non-hassam. Off to a similar topic, we have a Mishnah, Moedim Chacham Rabbi Kiva, all the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Kiva regarding a different matter, regarding little patches of grain, of whatever produce. They hold that even though it's scattered around the field, but they're really all part of one crop, it's one field, even though he picked some early, in which case he left some empty patches which separates it. Doesn't matter, it's all one big thing, and there's only one chi of pay on the entire thing. But they agree. When we're speaking about herbs and spices which are typically planted in smaller quantity patches, each one has its own designation. Each one is regarded like its own planting area, its own field, so to speak, and you have to do payah from each one. If one plants sheves, which some translate as dill, or chardal or mustard, a couple of places throughout the field. In this case, each one is separate. And pay has to give a payah, leave off the corner for the poor. From each one separately. Return to his base. Okay, seemingly, sheves the machai v'payah. And Rashi learns, in contrast to typical Gemara language, where Vaha is sort of the opening salvo of a question. Here it's not so. We're just making a diuk. We're implying. Vaha Sheves M'chai B'Peah. Once we concluded that Sheves still has pay obligations, so the assumption is that it's also chayiv in Masra. Chayiv Masra. This non, we know that it goes hand in hand. Mishnah said so. Kol Shechai B'Peah Chayiv Masra. Next link in the chain. Once that's established, once Masra applies, Tumah applies as well. As per the Mishnah, the Snan, there's a Girsa that adds the Snan. We have a Mishnah that ties them together. So we have this sort of chain reaction. If it's Chayiv and Peah, it's Chayiv and Masra. It's Chayiv and Masra, it's Chayiv. Alma, apparently, Kol Midli. Any material, the other Tama. You see, Sheves isn't typically consumed outright. It's used as a seasoning, as a spice, as a flavor enhancer. Alma kol midu davar l'tam, something which is meant for enhancement of flavor, mitam tumas oichlin, is regarded as food regarding tumas oichlin. Why? The high Sheves, because this Sheves, just discussed, l'tam is meant for flavor, and we see that it has tumas oichlin. But our meaning, how comes a kasha? Other examples of seasonings and herbs, where it's not so simple. All these, they can be purchased using Maser Sheni money in Yerushalayim, which is meant for food only. So regarding that matter, they're considered like food, but they're not considered food regarding Tumah. They're sort of in between. They're a pseudo food. They're food enhancers. They can be used to enhance your dish. Hence, they're considered like food regarding buying with Maser money, but they're not inherently food regarding Tumah. The Rabbi Kiva. Look, either both in or both out. If they're food regarding Maser money, why not regarding Tumah? If they don't have Tumah, so they're not like food for that, then they shouldn't have food status for Maser Sheni money either. Afheim lo yilachim keser Maser. Rabbi Yechon concludes his discussion that there was a vote taken in the Beis HaMedrash, and the consensus was it's not food. Nimna b'gamru. They took a vote. They concluded she'ein nikachim keser Maser ve'im etam tumah. It's not food, which seems inconsistent with our Gemara, that even this Sheves, this dill herb, is considered fully food. Amarav Chizda. There are two uses for Sheves. Ketanya hi b'Sheves asui l'kemach. When we speak about Sheves being regarded as food, that's the Sheves which is ground into the kemach, this milky dip. So it in itself will be eaten. It's not just a seasoning or a flavoring. In that regard, it's considered fully food regarding all matters. So it depends. If it's used as just a flavor enhancer, which you sort of add to the soup, but it won't actually be eaten outright, then it's not food. But if you're going to grind and eat it per se, then it has a din of food. So it can go either way. Rashi says, I presented the following thought to Rav Kahana. The question is, what's the default status of this Sheves? Don't think that it has to actually be designated for Kemach, but otherwise, if it's unspecified, we assume it's meant for the pot and it doesn't have a din of. Just the opposite. Typically, Sheves is meant for that dip. That's its primary use. Unless designated otherwise. It's none. I'll prove it from the Mishnah that the presumed status is food. Sheves, this dill, Mishnah Asan Tam Kadera, was thrown into the soup and it released its flavor into the Kadera. So although initially it was truma, now lost its truma status because it lost its flavor into the soup in the kadera. And likewise, it's no longer truma soich. End quote. This implies that until it released its flavor, before it released its tam to kader, it is regarded yesh mishum truma. And the question is why? If the assumption is that it's meant for a soup, in which case it doesn't have food status unless it's explicitly redirected for that dip use. So how do you explain this Mishnah? Even before it released its flavor. Look, you see it's in a soup. Stamala kadera, it's presumed for the kadera, which means to say it doesn't have tumas oichlin. Elo lav shmamino. That proves my point. That in fact, stamala kemach asui shmamino, that its default position is food. It's meant for that dip. And unless he redesignated it as he was growing it or as he was picking it, it retains that food status. That explains why. Even if he throws it into the soup, but it still has its flavor, it's going to be considered food regarding tumas oichlin. Until it loses its flavor, in which case it's totally useless and inedible. But until that point, it is regarded as food. Okay, so in summation, we discussed the status of sheves. The conclusion was that unlike other seasonings and herbs, which are merely meant to convey flavor, on which we have a conclusion, nimna v'gamru, there's no food status to it, you can't buy it with masim sheni money, it doesn't have tumas oichlin. Sheves is a bit different because its presumed status is for the kemach, in which case it will be eaten outright, unless initially it had been designated for kadera purposes, for merely conveying a flavor. In that case, it would not have food status. Continues the Mishnah. Oh, we had this before. Kol shechai b'eretz hageiz, chai matanis. An animal which is subject to the mitzvah b'eretz hageiz, such as a sheep, matanis will also apply to it. So you give the kohen the 3 portions, Ezroya, L'choyam, B'keva. But it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. It's not a perfect equation, because you have v'yesh, some which are shechai matanis, like a goat, like a cow, but not resh sagez. Ve'inechai resh sagez. On to another matter. Kol sheyesh le'bir, yesh le'shvius. So we know that food material, which grows on Shemitah the year, is subject to the Shemitah laws. It must be consumed properly, can't be destroyed, it has to be personal consumption, not commercial use. And also, beer would apply, which means that you can only retain it, you can only hold on to this material as long as it's still available for the animals out in the field. But once it's no longer available for the animals out in the field, you can't hold on to this food. So shvius applies to all food matters, but beer only to those which eventually become depleted. But something which is around all year round, beer wouldn't apply to that. So once again, we have this back and forth. Kol sheyesh la beer, yesh la shvius. Where beer applies, certainly shvius applies. But v'yesh, you have some sheyesh la shvius, that's subject to shvius. Ve'in la beer, no beer, because it never gets depleted. Kigoin, alei haluf shoyte v'dandana. What's an example of something which has shvius and beer? The leaf of the luf, shoyte, the leaf of the dandana, which eventually, dry out and wither away and not available throughout the winter. At which point you have to release this material out to the field. But you have yesh shvius, like beer, something which is subject to shemitah and not beer. That's the root of this same plant. That's an interesting irony. So in the same plant you have 2 elements. A leaf becomes scarce and becomes depleted and is subject to beer, but not the root itself, which is around all year round. Ikar aluf shoyte v'ikar adandan dechsiv. Whereas the pasuk regarding beer, and we learn, as long as the animal has access to this material out in the field, you can feed it to the animals back at home. But if it's not available for the animal out there, we have to banish it, get rid of it. You can no longer continue feeding it to your animals in the barn. And these roots, never get depleted. in which case, biur is not an issue. We move on to the next Mishnah. Regarding kosher signs of animals and fish. Says the Mishnah, you should know a scientific fact is, kol sheyesh lo kaskeses yesh lo snapper. If a fish has scales, automatically it has fins. It goes together. But not the other way around. You have many non-kosher fish which have fins and no scales. So basically, if you discover scales, automatically you know he had fins, and he's kosher. Over to animals, Rashi points out only kosher varieties have horns. Rashi says, "Ein karnaim el lebehema v'chaya tahira," and therefore it leads us to the equation: Kol sheyesh le karnaim yesh le tafayim. If an animal is known to have horns, automatically we know it has split hooves and it's kosher. But not the other way. You could have split hooves like a chazer without horns, and it's not kosher. Explains the Gemara, if it has scales, which automatically denote fins as well, then you know it's a dog tahar, kosher fish. However, snapper, some have fins, but not scales. That's a dog tummy. Now comes the obvious question. If it all depends on scales is an indication, is a confirmation of fins, so why does the Torah have to enumerate both kosher signs? Just say scales, which automatically include fins. If they look, in any case, we're basing our classification on scales. If so, snapper, the fin requirement, the Kasser Rachman, the Torah speaks about, lovely, what's that for? Answer is, snapper, if the Torah not referring to fins, I wouldn't know what kaskeses means. These are foreign words to me. I would say, my kaskeses. What is kaskeses? That's the snapper. My kaskeses is the snapper. A fin is a kosher sign. But I would include even a non-kosher fish. Kasser Rachman is snapper b'kaskeses. But now, Torah speaks about two signs, snapper kaskeses. Automatically I know one is a fin and one has scales. Now, after the fact, we have two words. But how do we know what's what? How do we know the kaskeses levushu, that a kaskeses is that cover of scales? This is by Goliath. He was wearing this coat of armor made of scales. So we see, it's a coat, it's a cover. Ask the Gemara, okay, but now that we know the true meaning of kaskeses, so it's back to the question. Just say kaskeses, which has already been confirmed as scales, and once it has scales, it automatically has fins, and it's kosher. The classic answer: Yagdil Torah v'yader. Torah wanted to give us the ability to expound, to elaborate, to have broader discussions regarding these matters of Torah, Chachmas Hashem, and refer outright to all these elements, all these kosher signs, which make the kosher species, even though technically it could have just been presented in short form, and would imply, rather this way, which broadens the discussion, and gives us more opportunity to learn details of the Torah. Okay, on to the next Mishnah. Over to the Hilchos Brachos. We know we have bracha rishona prior to eating, a bracha achrona following the meal. So if something needs a pre-bracha, certainly a post-bracha. Kolaton bracha la'achrav. Kolaton bracha la'achrav. Someone who needs a post-bracha, ton bracha la'fanav, requires a pre-bracha. But not the other way. Ton bracha la'fanav. Some have a pre-bracha without a post-bracha. For instance, vegetables, which aren't as significant as bread and mezainis, only a pre-bracha, not a post-bracha. Hold it. Rabbi Yitzchak, the Baruch HaYarak, would also make a post-bracha on vegetables like we do. So what's the Mishnah covering? What's the example of pre without post? It covers water. There was a bracha achrona on water as well. What's the Mishnah referring to? L'suyi mitzvahs. You do a mitzvah, you make a bracha asher kichana before, not after. Hold it. The ones in Eretz Yisrael, who make a bracha upon removing their tefillin, the bracha would be Asher Kedushanim Mitzvayis Tzvana Lishmar Chokav, to guard his directives. And Tosfos points out, it wasn't just every time they took the tefillin off, it was when nighttime arrived, perhaps Shabbos, because you're not meant to wear tefillin, so there was a mitzvah to remove the tefillin. They made a special bracha upon concluding the mitzvah. So now, the rule doesn't really hold true. Lasuye mai. So what does the Mishnah mean? Pre without post. Lasuye reichni. Incense, besamim, which Rashi says, Mevarchan alein ba'atzei besamim. So you make a pre-bracha before enjoying the fragrance. Ve'ein tefana bracha lachar, but not afterwards. The hana mu'etas, he said Rashi. It's a low-level hana. It's not as substantial as food. So that suffices with a pre-bracha. Oh, okay. Let's recap today's daf. We started with the analysis in the Kal V'chomer discussion between Rabbi Yochanan Nuri and the Chachamim regarding whether or not a machshava is required for activation of Tumah Kala on the Nivla Seif Torah. It was back and forth, and we concluded that the Chachamim are referring to the general concept, the difference between Tumah Kala in general and Tumah Chamura. Hence, they negated his Kal V'chomer. Tumah Chamura is more powerful, does not need machshava. Perhaps Tumah Kala does need machshava. Rava teaches us that a machshava b'mechuber, although it doesn't work for Tumas Eichel, works to activate Chiva Masra. And we had a raya, some kashas. Ultimately, Rava tells us it's all about, when the Mishnah speak about these formulas, it's all about concept, not necessarily relating to every specific individual circumstance. Sheves, this seasoning, if it's meant for Kedera, it has no food status. If it's meant for Kemech, which is the presumed status, it has food status. Reish Hagez is specific to sheep. The halacha of biur is specific to those types which become depleted throughout the winter. An animal which exhibits horns automatically has split hooves and is kosher. Likewise, a fish with scales automatically has fins, which is kosher. Bracha lefan of not la'achrav, either yarak, maya, mitzvahs, or, as the Gemara concludes, reichani. All the best to you, and hatzlacha.